I am Elliot and Waxwing is my music school. And this is part 5 of things everyone should know before the first guitar lesson. So now we're getting into some territory that is a little bit more complex, but it's still equally as important to know as a beginner. As I mentioned in the first episode, you don't really need to know any of this stuff to begin learning the guitar with a teacher, but if you had the foundation that we cover in these episodes, then you'll be much better off, and I think your teacher will be very thankful. So in this episode, we are handling an introduction to rhythm. Rhythm is dealing with time. It is the duration in which we hold the notes or the rests in any given piece of music. So a piece of music without any rhythm really wouldn't sound like anything at all. In order for a piece of music to be played at all, it requires some sort of rhythm. So rhythm is the time aspect of music. Rhythm may well be the most important aspect of music, and so we really do not want to skip this episode. The first music that humans ever made was likely just rhythm. Some of the first instruments were likely drums, but before that, we have our bodies and we can clap. If we can clap, if we can make a rhythm, then people can dance to it, people can move to it. Your breath is a rhythm. Your heartbeat is a rhythm. Everything in the world does have a rhythm. Music is operating on the same principles. The Spanish genre of music, flamenco, is often known for its guitar style, but really what flamenco is a dance and a rhythm. So the first flamenco dances were done just to hand clapping, right? Which then evolved into castanets and then eventually the guitar, which was responsible for a lot of the rhythm. The same goes for EDM, like electronic dance music. There are so many different genres of EDM, and actually most of those genres are separated by the drum beat. In my experience, this is a concept that many guitar players specifically really struggle with, and there are several reasons for this. It seems like many guitar teachers don't put as much of an emphasis on rhythm as we should be. Other instruments, when we're learning how to read music, reading the music staff, rhythm is completely integrated into how we read. Each note head has a specific duration associated with it. When we're reading things like tablature, at least until recently, there wasn't a whole lot of rhythmic indication on the sheet. So what we would get a lot of is people learning the notes and then either listening to the song or seeing their teacher or somebody else playing it and trying to mimic the rhythm without being able to really count it out or be able to figure it out on their own. Because the methods of reading music that we had for the guitar, like tablature, really didn't give us a leg up on rhythm. This seems to be an issue with a lot of intermediate guitar players as well. I often have a lot of guitar players coming up to me saying, I would like to learn more strum patterns, right? I feel locked into a specific strum pattern. I don't really know how to get around this. But really, the way that we get around it is learning rhythm at an intimate level. Because the strum pattern, all that it is strumming the guitar strings at a specific rhythm. People get locked into thinking it's down and up in a certain pattern. Down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. But really, to me, the direction at which you are strumming the strings is not really important at all. What's really important in a strum pattern is the rhythm at which you are strumming. So just like us, every piece of music has a pulse. We can think of it as a living thing. That pulse is usually pretty regular based on the tempo. So the pulse of every song is just a beat that's going throughout it. And it's usually pretty regular. Now some songs have tempo changes and whatnot, but for the most part, a song's going to have a specific pulse. It can be really slow or very fast or somewhere in the middle. That pulse is going throughout the entire song. And so we want to learn how to count the pulse. But if we were counting every beat without looping it, so we were going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and upwards, we're going to get lost very fast. Maybe a song has 500 pulses. You don't really want to have to count those 500 different pulses. So what we do is we divide that pulse into little segments. And those segments are very easy to digest. We often will divide it into groups of 4 or 3 or sometimes 6 and higher. So this is where we get things like time signatures. So we have something that looks like this. This is 4/4. That's what we call this time signature, 4/4. So the top number indicates how many beats are per measure. Now again, the measure is just a segment of that pulse. So that's how we are counting that pulse. We'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then loop back 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and many people will have heard musicians counting like that. We can also divide it into 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And time signatures like 6, 8 can either be felt in 6 or in 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's many different ways that we can count a given pulse. Now this is just for the reference of the musician, really. This makes it easier to learn and easier to practice. So rhythm is all about where the notes fall in that given pulse or in between the pulse notes. So many students, when we're starting out, often we just want to jump right into learning something. We want to learn how to play the notes, we want to do it, and we want to play the whole song as one big thing. But often we have to divide things into smaller chunks and even divide things like the notes of the song and the rhythm of the song. Then we can put them together and be able to apply it to the entire piece of music. When we were talking about playing rhythm for the guitar specifically, usually it is our right hand that is responsible for doing all the rhythm on the instrument. If you're left-handed, it'll be the opposite. It'll be your left hand. Often when students are learning something, they focus so much on what the left hand is doing, all the notes and everything, that we don't really pay attention much to what the right hand is doing. But the right hand is responsible for everything to do with rhythm. It is making the sound, it is vibrating the strings, it is striking the strings. And so in order to get better at rhythm, if that is your goal, we have to isolate our right hand. Often we are isolating things just for our left hand so that we can get all the notes proper. We're taking it into segments and everything. We often just assume that our right hand is going to do what we want it to. But how is it going to do what we want it to if we don't practice it on its own? Often we are taking everything that we're doing with the left hand and we're practicing the rhythm at the same time. Sometimes we take on a little bit too much at one point. So it's really good to separate these two things into the notes that the left hand is playing and the rhythm that the right hand is playing. Sometimes the right hand is doing very complex things and we have to separate it to really master it. This is why I insist on people first clapping the rhythm, tapping the rhythm, and then when we take it to our instrument, we just play with the right hand. We get the rhythm into the picking hand, we isolate it on one string, then we play the actual rhythm of the song on the different strings that it's going to be played on. And only when we have mastered that, then do we apply the left hand to it. We should not assume that any of our hands are going to do exactly what we want it to without isolating and practicing it. So really, first of all, we need to get that pulse into our body, feeling that pulse. This is where the metronome comes in, and it is your best friend when it comes to learning rhythm. We really got to get that pulse into our body, and it's going to take a long time for many of us to be able to get that pulse into our body and not have it speed up or slow down all over the place, right? It takes a long time to be able to have an internal metronome be pretty steady. So playing music to a metronome almost always is your friend. A lot of students, when they are first learning music, they can play a bar or two of the music in rhythm, but then they get to a part where they don't know it very well and they slow down. And then they kind of learn over time of always slowing that part down, that section they play slower than the rest of it. Often we will speed through the first part of the song, we get to a part we don't know that well, we slow down, and then we get to a part we know and we speed up again, or we start learning something completely out of sync with the rest of the song. And this is not good. This is where a metronome comes in. The metronome will keep you true to that pulse, right? If you go off that beat, you will hear it right away. This is really important for when we're changing chords as well. Many beginner students, when we're learning to change chords, often have a pause in between, which throws the rhythm of the song off. When we should be thinking of it like, right? So that beat, da 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 da. So we want the chord changes to be directly on the downbeat, right? If we're not playing on the downbeat, then we're always lagging behind. So if we were playing with other musicians or we were trying to sing along ourselves, we would find that there would be a lag, right? We don't want there to be a lag. People can notice rhythmic mistakes far more than they can notice tonal mistakes. So we need to learn how to count this. The time signature tells us not only how many beats are per measure, but it also tells us what kind of note we are saying gets the beat. So in 4/4, this means that there are 4 beats per measure, and what we call a quarter note gets the beat. So this plays into reading music on the staff. Now we're not going to be getting into that too much, but we are going to be talking about what the different note heads look like and what they mean. So on this chart, at the very top we have a whole note, and that thing just looks like an open circle. That open circle is usually worth 4 quarter notes, right? Or 4 beats, 4 pulses. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we would play a whole note on the 1, and then we would count 4 more pulses before playing another whole note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now below that, we have an open circle with a stem going up. Now that indicates a half note. A half note is worth 2 beats, or 2 quarter notes. So that would be counted 1, 2, 3, 4. The snaps indicating the half note. 1, 2, 3, 4. So below that we have something that looks exactly like the half note, except the circle is colored in black. This is our quarter note. In 4/4, this is the kind of note that is getting the beat. The bottom number being 4, 4 equals 1/4. That means that that note gets the beat. So in a bar of only quarter notes, every pulse we're going to play a note. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is where a concept called subdivision comes in. And we don't only have the pulses that we can play our notes on, we can also divide the beats in half and into quarters and even further. If we divide a beat in half, what do we get? If the beats are quarter notes, then the beats in between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we can do things like mixing and matching these. 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4. This is how we get a lot of interesting and more complex rhythms, is by subdividing the beats. Eighth notes are indicated by having notes that look very similar to quarter notes, except at the top of their stem they'll have a little flag, and sometimes those notes will be connected if there's multiple eighth notes beside each other. Now we can divide the eighth notes even further into 16th notes. Now the eighth notes we were counting as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now we can subdivide those quarter notes into 16th notes, which means there are 4 notes per beat. And this we would count 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4 E and A, 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4 E and A. So there's 4 notes played in the space of 1 beat or 1 pulse. Now we can mix and match these rhythms as well. 1, 2 and 3 E and A, 4. So doing this with a metronome, I have my metronome app, Metronome Beats, set to 70 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 E and a 2, 3 E and a 4. 1 and 2 E and a 3 and 4 E and a. Okay, so the metronome keeps us in time, and we need to learn how to subdivide those beats. Now the way that we typically do this, we take rhythms devoid of any pitches and we practice clapping them or tapping them on your legs or on a table or what have you. Or we can take our instrument like a guitar and just with your right hand and your pick, you can practice playing that rhythm with the pick. So in this first exercise, we have some pretty simple rhythms going on, but we're going to start doing this just so that we are familiar with the different note heads and how they appear in a rhythmic phrase. So you'll see that we have quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes in this phrase. Now we're going to put on our metronome, and we can clap this rhythm. So we'll count it in 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that was the first exercise. I hope that makes sense. The half notes are given the duration of 2 quarter notes, and the whole notes given the duration of 4 quarter notes. So in the second example, it's a similar concept. We only have half notes and quarter notes, but they are mixed and matched in each measure. We're going to start out our metronome at 70 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try that one again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now these exercises might seem dry at first, but let me tell you, they are completely necessary for any budding musician or guitar player to learn and to practice on their own, so we can get to understand more complex rhythms, and we can get to feel the rhythm and know how it looks on a page. So in this third exercise, you might notice that now we have half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes. Now remember that the eighth notes are counted on the number or the pulse, and we put an and in between them. So then we are putting 2 notes into the space of 1 pulse. So let's go over this a couple times. This is also in 4/4, meaning that there's 4 quarter notes per measure. So let's start up our metronome. It's 70 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's try doing that with our instrument. And we're just going to isolate our right hand, or if you're left-handed, this will be your left hand. So the picking hand is doing the rhythm. Let's do our best, whenever you're playing rhythm, starting out, is to count out loud and to count the subdivision as well. Let's start up our metronome and do this example again, just with the picking hand, and we can mute the strings over here. So I'm just going to play on the 6th string. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do that again. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Now it might actually help if you kind of bob along to the pulse to get that pulse into your body, or if you tap your foot as well, but we have to make sure that our foot is tapping in time with the metronome. So this fourth example is a little bit more tricky. We are using the 16th notes now, but it's really good to get used to playing these notes this early on. So I've slowed down the metronome by 10 beats per minute so that we are at 60 beats per minute now. So these 16th notes, the ones with the double bar connecting them, is putting 4 notes in the space of 1 beat. So here we go. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 E and a 3. 4 E and a 1. 2, 3, 4. 1 E and a 2. 3 E and a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try this again. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 E and a 3, 4 E and a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 E and a 2, 3 E and a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Now it may have been challenging to stay on beat with me during this video, so I would encourage you to go back and try these exercises with the video, or you can set up your own metronome and try them on your own. If you're having trouble with the first two exercises, stick with those for a little bit before you try the subdividing exercises. So rather than jumping into learning how to read music on the staff for the guitar, Tablature has gotten to the point where we are now indicating rhythm in a lot of it. So in this example, which is an excerpt from the song Sinner Man, you may notice that we have rhythmic markings above and below the tab. So we have a series of eighth notes followed by some quarter notes, and some of which can be indicated as half notes. So if we were going to clap or tap the top rhythm, so the one above the tab, it would sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Okay, so when we approach a melody or a song and there is rhythmic markings, it is good to separate the rhythm from the melody so that we can actually hear how the rhythm is supposed to be played. After we've done that with clapping, then we can take our instrument and apply the rhythm to the right hand. First of all, we're just going to do it on one string like we did before. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So we are just dealing with the rhythm on the top of the tab. So now we can take that and apply it to the individual strings that the notes are played on. Then once we have nailed the rhythm on the individual strings without our left hand, then we can incorporate our left hand. Again, I'm just going to be playing the melody portion of this. So the next example is an excerpt from the song Yesterday by the Beatles. It's a very well-known melody and it might be useful to take a look at. So this song is also in 4/4, and you might notice that the first bar there we have 2/8 notes followed by a line with a dot next to it. Now this is kind of tricky. When we see a dot next to a rhythmic marking, it means that we are adding half the value of that rhythmic marking to it. And so in this case, this line is indicating a half note, and the half note with a dot next to it means that that half note is being given 3 quarter notes. Okay, so the dot indicates that we are adding half a value to that note. If we see a dot next to a quarter note, that means that that quarter note is worth 3/8 notes as opposed to just the 2. Now this can be a little bit tricky to get used to. That means that this first bar would be counted 1 and 2, 3, 4. When we clapped on the dotted half note, it got 2, 3, 4, worth 3 quarter notes. And you may notice that at the beginning of the next bar, there is a line on the first beat indicating a quarter note. Now that quarter note, nothing is being played on it, so that would be a rest. So we don't play anything on that note either. So clapping the rhythm of this melody would sound like this. Start up our metronome at 70 beats per minute. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. After we have applied it to the strings without using our left hand, then we can apply it using the notes. And this usually we want to try doing very slowly and probably segment it into its smaller bars to practice it before we really give it a shot. So here we have the metronome at 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when it comes to strum patterns on the guitar, people often think that it's really important in what direction that we are actually playing with our pick. But really, the way that I get people to start off is by just being able to play in time with a metronome on equal quarter notes. So we're starting here on an E minor chord, which we'll have our second finger on the 2nd fret on the 5th string, and our 3rd finger on the 4th string on the 2nd fret. There will be episodes coming up on how to play chords. And we'll start up our metronome at 70 beats per minute, and we just want to be able to strum in time with the metronome. Okay, now after being able to do that in time with and without the metronome, then we have to apply that to simple chord changes. We're going to change from this E minor chord to an A minor chord. Now the A minor chord, if you just take those 2 fingers, you move them to the next set of strings. So now we're on the 2nd fret on the 3rd string and on the 4th string using our 2nd and 3rd fingers. And we add our 1st finger here to the 1st fret on the 2nd string. And we play the last 5 strings. So really the change between them, here is E minor. We can play all 6 strings. Here is A minor. So we are going to play 8 pulses on each chord, so 8 beats before changing to the A minor. Now the goal here is to get that change as fast as possible. Now if we are not familiar with these chords enough, it's going to take some time of drilling between just the chord changes. But then we have to put it in time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's not a whole lot of time that we have in between the chord changes. And often this is where students get caught up, is we have a long pause between the change. So playing our chord transitions with a metronome helps us stay in time. And we can slow this down as slow as we need it to get that chord change on time. We can play it at 30 beats per minute if we want. We can play it at 40, 50, whatever is slow enough. But we have to start slow before we can start playing fast. We have to crawl before we can walk. We have to walk before we can run. So we have to be able to play on beat and on pulse and have our chord changes in time with one another before we really want to start subdividing with our strums. Another simple strum pattern that we can practice to get used to different patterns, we can go back to our E minor chord and we can play 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. So with the metronome on, we're going to be playing on the downbeat of 1. On 2, we're going to have an 8th note pattern, 2 and, so that's a down up. You can even play it down down if you want, but we're wasting a little bit of energy having to go back round. So down, down, up, down, down, up is the pattern. But there's no problem with playing down, 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 down. It doesn't really change the sound all that much, right? Whether I play up or down, the sound will be largely the same as long as I'm strumming the strings all at once. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. Another strum pattern that we can do is 1 and 2 E and a 1 and 2 E and a. So that is 2 8th notes followed by 4 16th notes, and that repeated. 1 and 2 and a 1 and 2 and a. So the trick to strum patterns isn't about learning all these different kinds of strum patterns, which can be fine, it's okay, but really if you want to master it, you have to know rhythm on an intimate level and know how to subdivide and be able to choose what rhythms or what offbeats you want to play. This is what really makes strum patterns interesting, is the rhythm, not really the pattern in which you are strumming up and down. Okay, so that is the end of the episode. I know that that's a lot to digest. You can watch this video as many times as you need to really absorb all that information. I believe that learning rhythm is the most indispensable skill that we can have as musicians, and it's especially important for guitar players because it is often neglected in our world. So really pay attention to this video and try to drill those rhythmic exercises as much as you can. Up next, we'll have episode 6 of the Beginner Guitar series, which we will be talking about good practice habits. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel, or send this video to some people who you think could benefit from it as well. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.